On January 21, 2025, the American destroyer USS Spruance escorted a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. The mission proceeded as planned, the media reported its success, and the Pentagon remained silent. 18 days later, an Iranian tanker passed through the same strait, unescorted, and without a single shot fired. No one wrote a word about it because it wasn't news. It was the norm. Here's a paradox that's rarely discussed. Iran daily sends its own tankers through the strait, which, according to Western media, is under threat of Iranian closure. No mines appear in the path of Iranian vessels. No IRGC boats. Not a single incident. Because a mine weapon isn't a lock on a door. It's a lock on someone else's door. And it only works one way. The physics here are fundamental. A bottom mine doesn't know whose flag the ship is flying. It needs to be programmed according to its acoustic signature, its tonnage, its passage counter. And that means whoever lays the mines knows exactly who to let through. And that changes everything. The official name for the threat, asymmetric mine warfare, sounds like a textbook term. It conceals a simple engineering reality. The U.S. Navy spends about $900 billion a year. Of that, less than 1% goes to mine warfare. Less than 1% goes to defense against weapons that have inflicted 77% of all combat damage to U.S. ships since 1950. 77% of losses from 1% of expenditures. If this were a corporate strategy, the board of directors would have been fired by now. Why is that? Because a mine is literally an invisible enemy. It doesn't fly, doesn't maneuver, doesn't produce a heat signature. It simply waits. For a week, a month, a year. The Iranian EM-52 lies on the seabed at depths of up to 100 meters. And its composite hull absorbs sound, just like ordinary stone. Modern naval sonar was developed to hunt submarines, objects 100 meters long, with active engines and a metal hull. A mine is 30 centimeters in diameter, non-metallic, and silent. The difference is roughly the same as between searching for a truck and searching for a coin in the same field. The most expensive navy in human history is losing to weapons cheaper than a used motorcycle, not because it lacks the technology, but because it never seriously wanted to address the issue. There's a formula the Pentagon doesn't like to say out loud. The cost of detecting a single mine is 1,000 times the cost of the mine itself. Not 10, not 100, 1,000. An EM-52 mine is about $1,500, an AN/AQS-20. Helicopter detection system is $1.5 million each, and that's just the equipment, not including the carrier ship, crew, logistics, or fuel. Now multiply that by the number of mines Iran can lay in a single night from fishing boats. The math doesn't work out in anyone's favor, except the side with the mines. But here's where the paradox truly reaches its depth. The systems that are supposed to close this gap, unmanned underwater vehicles, laser minesweepers, autonomous sonars, exist. They are funded. They are tested. And they don't work well enough precisely where they are needed most. In the clear waters off San Diego, so to speak. In the murky, salty, thermally stratified Strait of Hormuz. No, an environment that can't be replicated in a test site wins out over the laboratory every time. Money does not solve the problem that physics posed before the budget existed. On July 31, 1988, the American cruiser USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian civilian airliner over the Strait of Hormuz. 290 people died. The official cause of the accident, the crew mistook the Airbus A300 for an F-14 fighter jet. Radar showed the plane climbing, but in reality, it was descending. The IFF system was inconclusive. The decision was made within 20 seconds. This isn't a story about incompetence. It's a story about what happens to human perception when the information environment degrades to a critical point. The Vincennes was in an active combat zone, had just completed a firefight with Iranian boats, and its crew hadn't slept for over 24 hours. Amidst GPS spoofing, radar interference, and the acoustic noise of 80 vessels moving simultaneously, the commander makes decisions based on the information he has, not the correct one. Today, the same factors are at work in the Strait, only more powerfully. Spoofing is blanketing the entire area. False AIS signals are multiplying in the airwaves. Thermal inversion over the water distorts the radar image. And somewhere in this noise, a tanker carrying 2 million barrels of oil is moving, the coordinates of which on the Escort screen are a beautiful fiction. The most dangerous weapon in the Strait of Hormuz isn't a mine or a missile. It's the uncertainty in which the right decision looks just as much like the wrong one. In 1997, naval theorist Arthur Sabrowski coined the term network-centric warfare. The idea is simple and beautiful. If every ship, aircraft, and soldier is connected to a single information network, the advantage in decision-making speed becomes absolute. The enemy operates blind, while you operate with the full picture. The concept captivated the Pentagon for 2 decades and consumed trillions of dollars. In the Strait of Hormuz, it falls apart in one morning. Network-centric warfare presupposes one fundamental condition: the network must function. GPS is the backbone of this network. Without precise coordinates, there is no spatial reference for the data. Without reference, there is no overall picture. Without a picture, each ship is once again operating alone, as in 1942, only with a screen that confidently displays a lie. This is worse than a lack of information. False confidence kills faster than acknowledged ignorance. Iran wasn't developing means to counter the American fleet. Iran was developing means to counter the American network. And these are fundamentally different tasks, with fundamentally different budgets. Jamming a 20-watt GPS signal can be accomplished with equipment costing a few $1,000s. Reconstructing an operational picture from this chaos is a task that a Navy costing $900 billion can't accomplish. The most expensive weapon in the world is useless if the enemy turns off reality before you can shoot it. In 2012, Iran held the Great Prophet 7 military exercises. Official footage showed a massive salvo of coastal missiles, a swarm of speedboats, and simultaneous attacks from multiple directions. Western analysts dismissed this as propaganda. Partially, they were right. But behind the theatrics lurked a doctrine that deserved closer examination. Iranian military thought calls this swarm tactics, Asiman-e-Shaytani, the devil's sky. The principle is brutally simple. Not one powerful strike, but 100 weak ones simultaneously. No single target is critical. Each requires a response. The defense system is overwhelmed not by superior firepower, but by the superior number of decisions made in a given time. An American destroyer can shoot down 8 missiles in a row. But if 24 are flying simultaneously, from different directions, at different altitudes, mixed with decoys, the fire control system begins to prioritize. And in this pause between priorities, something happens. Now apply swarm tactics to a minefield with GPS spoofing and a tanker that can't physically evade them. The mines keep the ship in the corridor. Spoofing deprives the escort of a picture. The swarm finishes off what's left. These aren't 3 separate threats. They're a single system where each element amplifies the others. There is no combined defense against a combined threat. There is only a choice of what to sacrifice first. In 2019, the tanker front Altair burned in the Sea of Oman. Nearby, the tanker Kokuka Courageous burned, its hull blown open. Secretary of State Pompeo went on camera 4 hours later and named Iran as the culprit. The evidence came in the form of video footage from an American patrol aircraft, which allegedly showed an Iranian boat removing an unexploded mine from the Kokuka. The video is grainy, the angle is awkward, and the boat is small. Japan, whose prime minister was in Tehran on an official visit at the time of the attack, publicly doubted the American account. The owner of the Kokuka claimed that his crew saw flying objects, not mines. This isn't a detective story or a conspiracy theory. It's a demonstration of the third dimension of the Hormuz problem, one that's not discussed in military reviews. Attribution in the strait is nearly impossible. A mine leaves no trace. A boat remains undetectable in the darkness. The drone that dropped the device vanishes among 130 commercial vessels on the radar screen. And every time attribution remains disputed, escalation stalls. It's impossible to respond to a strike whose origin hasn't been legally proven. Iran understood this before anyone else. Deniability isn't a side effect of mine warfare. It's its main tactical advantage. The most effective weapon is the one whose use cannot be officially confirmed. In 2024, the Houthis attacked over 100 commercial vessels in the Gulf of Yemen. Insurance rates for passage through the Red Sea increased ninefold in 3 months. Major container lines, Maersk, MSC, and CMA CGM, rerouted their fleets around the Cape of Good Hope. This meant an extra 2 weeks of transit time, an extra $800,000 in fuel per voyage. Not a single tanker was sunk, but global logistics were reorganized without a single critical hit. This is what people don't understand when they talk about military protection for shipping. The goal of mine warfare in Hormuz is not to sink a tanker. The goal is to raise the insurance premium to a level that makes commercial voyages unprofitable. Lloyd's of London charges a premium for war risk, and the captain, the ship owner, and the charterer all start counting. When voyage insurance costs more than the cargo, the fleet turns around without firing a shot. This isn't a military victory. It's a financial one. An American escort protects a tanker from physical damage, but it cannot protect a voyage from economic infeasibility. These are different tasks with different tools, and the Navy only addresses one of them. You can escort a tanker through the strait and still lose, because the next tanker simply won't go there. In 1984, Saudi Arabia asked the United States to protect tankers in the Persian Gulf. Reagan agreed. 3 years passed before Operation Earnest Will officially began. 3 years of approvals, legal caveats, and interagency disputes over who would bear responsibility if a tanker under the American flag were to blow up. The bureaucratic machine worked at its own pace. The mines in the strait worked at theirs. Today, the decision-making cycle hasn't gotten shorter. It's gotten longer. Every incident in Hormuz passes through Central Command, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the National Security Council, coalition allies, the Pentagon's legal department, and the State Department's press office. By the time this chain agrees on a response, the Iranian boat has long since returned to port. The mine lies on the seabed, and the evidence has been eroded by time and salt water. The asymmetry here isn't just in the cost of weapons, it's in the speed of decision-making. The commander of an Iranian boat makes a decision in seconds and is accountable to one person. The commander of an American destroyer makes a decision in minutes and is accountable to an institution. Bureaucracy isn't a weakness of the system. It's built into it intentionally. But in the Strait of Hormuz, it's worth more than any mine. In 2025, China imported approximately 90 million tons of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Japan imported approximately 60% of its total hydrocarbon imports. South Korea imported over 50%. India imported a third. This isn't an American problem with an American solution. It's a collective vulnerability, which for some reason is usually addressed to a single fleet. The United States imports less than 10% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. The shale revolution made America a net exporter of hydrocarbons by 2019. Washington has a political and economic interest in freedom of navigation, but not an existential one. Tokyo, Seoul, and Beijing have an existential interest. Closing the strait for 2 weeks doesn't create a recession for the American economy, but it does for the Japanese economy. And here's the paradox that no one mentions at official briefings. The countries most dependent on the Hormuz Gap have the least mine countermeasure capabilities in the region, or have no naval presence there at all. China is building aircraft carriers. Japan is increasing its defense budget, but they have no minesweepers in the Persian Gulf. America pays for the security of a strait on which it has little control, while those who are completely dependent silently enjoy the results. In 2023, Iran seized the tanker advantage suite right in the shipping lane. In broad daylight, IRGC speedboats surrounded the vessel, armed men boarded it from a helicopter, and the tanker was taken to the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. The nearest American ship was 17 nautical miles away. It didn't make it in time. The entire operation took 22 minutes. 22 minutes is the time it takes a supertanker at full speed to travel about 10 kilometers. This is the time it physically takes an American destroyer to reach the incident site unless it's stationed right next to it. And stationing right next to each of the 80 ships that pass through the strait daily means having 80 escort ships constantly on duty. The entire U.S. surface fleet numbers about 300 vessels. A third of them are undergoing repairs or underway. The math leaves no room for maneuver. But it's not just about numbers. The seizure of the Advantage Suite demonstrated something more important than arithmetic. Iran has chosen a tool against which a military response is politically impossible. Opening fire on the IRGC boats already alongside a civilian tanker with an international crew would be the very source of disaster. The best defense against military superiority is to put the enemy in a situation where using that superiority means losing. In 2026, the Trump administration returned to a policy of maximum pressure on Iran. Sanctions were tightened. Diplomatic channels were narrowed to a minimum, and the rhetoric on both sides reached the level of 2019, the last time the strait teetered on the brink of open conflict. Things worked out that way, because both sides still had red lines that neither publicly crossed. The red lines have blurred. Not disappeared, but blurred. Iran has consistently demonstrated its ability to operate in the gray zone between peace and war without formally triggering escalation. Seizing tankers is not war. GPS spoofing is not war. A mine that no one has officially planted is not war. Each individual incident remains below the threshold requiring a military response. But the sum of these incidents creates an environment in which shipping is effectively unsafe, without a single official act of aggression. This is a doctrine, not an improvisation. It has a name, a strategy of attrition below the threshold of war. It doesn't require victory in a direct confrontation. It only requires maintaining uncertainty long enough for commercial decisions to begin to be made in its favor. Military force deters war. It's almost powerless against what's happening in Hormuz, because it's not war. Let's return to the tanker. Bridgeton, July 1987, a 10 by 5 meter hole in the hull, 3 warships astern of the supertanker, not ahead. The story ended happily. The convoy arrived, the oil was delivered, no one died. The Pentagon reported the operation's success, and it was true in the sense that any statistic is true if you choose the right denominator. 99% of tankers in Operation Earnest will reach their destinations. That's a fact. But back then, Iran had several hundred contact mines from World War I. Today it has rocket mines with acoustic guidance, passage counters, and composite hulls. Back then, navigation worked without GPS. There was nothing to jam. Today, the entire world fleet relies on a 20-watt signal. Back then, insurance markets didn't react to isolated incidents with instant risk reassessments. Today, the Lloyd's algorithm updates the war premium in real time. The success of 1987 is not an argument for repetition. It is an instruction manual for conditions that no longer exist. The most expensive fleet in human history faces a problem it has already solved, and the solution no longer works because it's not the problem that has changed, but the physics.